Okay, let's go.
All right, here we go. We have Beis Zion. A person who had his head and most of his body inside the sukkah and his table inside a house, Beit Shammai invalidates the sukkah and Beis Hillel validates it. Said Beis Hillel to Beis Shammai, did it not happen that the elders of Beis Shammai and the elders of Beis Hillel went to visit Reb Yochanan, son of the Koronite, and found him sitting with his head and most of his body inside the sukkah and his table within the house, and they said nothing to him? Beit Shammai replied to them, is that your proof? Actually, they said to him, is this how you have always conducted yourself? Then you have never in your life fulfilled the mitzvah of Sukkah. I told you, I think when we did this last time, that about the guy who lived across the, not the street from me, but across from my carusa that I learned with. He did that. He sat on a little, almost like a stoop, and half the table was outside, half was inside, and his wife was inside the house.
Mm-hmm.
I never got to see him actually, but
look, the way some of the Mepeset Sukkot are built out here, you know, because you've got like a 10-story building and, you know, only as much frontage of the building as you've got. So literally you've got like this little 4x4 area, 4 amas by 4 amas really, where one person can sit under the sky and the next bit is under a Mepeset.
Right. It was very strange, you know. I never got to see it, but it must like this is the Mishna right here. Okay, women, slaves, and minors are exempt from sukkah. A minor who does not need his mother is obligated to dwell in the sukkah. It once happened that the daughter-in-law of Beis Shammai, the elder, gave birth and removed the plaster roof and placed skak over the bed for the child. And we said that needing his mother means that he would wake up in the middle of the night and call for his mother.
Right.
All the 7 days a man must make his sukkah his permanent abode and his house his temporary abode. If it rained when it is permissible to leave.
When is it? It's a question. When is it permissible to leave?
Right. If it rained, when is it permissible to leave? When the porridge becomes spoiled. They illustrated this with a parable. To what is this comparable? To a slave who came to pour a cup for his master and he poured the jug at his face. He was never a slave again.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no. It's where the master poured the jug on the slave's face.
Right. But the slave must have been a reason.
Yeah. Right. So that's the point. Okay. So Perek Gimel.
I had it backwards. To a slave who came to pour a cup for his master and he poured. So it was the master who poured
the master throws it back in the slave's face. That's the thing. Is that the master's angry with the slave and doesn't want his service. That's the mashal of you know, we want to serve Hashem in the sukkah, and Hashem throws water on us instead of accepting our avodah.
Okay.
Lulav gazel v'hayavesh. So now we're talking about the technical requirements of the Arba Minim in this perek, and what disqualifies them. Lulav gazel v'hayavesh pasul. So if a lulav is stolen, that is said because it says ulakachtim lachem, it has to be yours, right? Not a stolen object.
Right.
Okay. And even after the original owner has given up on it, so now you've actually taken ownership of the lulav. Nonetheless, it's pasul midrabanan because it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah that's done with something that's stolen is a mitzvah ba'avera. So Chazal said even if technically you're now the owner of the lulav because the owner gave up on it, you still can't be yotze on the mitzvah midrabanan. Okay. Isn't it really funny? I mean that you actually need to tell people that you can't be yotze on something that was stolen. It's like, what are you doing stealing something in the first place? Why would you even think to be yotze on something that was stolen? And it's like unfortunately there's a certain I don't know what sort of psychological thing. You could probably tell me better than I could about what's it called when a person sort of rationalizes committing a crime in order to perform a mitzvah.
It's rationalization. It's that's what it is. I have it now, so I'm gonna be able to do this. I do the mitzvah. Yeah. He gets away with it. The same with the Kohen God. The Kohen goes into the base of Mikdash. You know, I'm okay. All right. You know, he's rationalizing that he's going to be okay. He knows he's committed, or you know, he's a virus.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, I could never understand. Well, I don't understand people who steal like they'll steal mushroom, they'll steal sidurs, they'll steal things that are used for mitzvahs. How could you do that? How could then you're
Right.
saying I could do this now. I could use the siddur from now on, or I could use this to fill in from now on. Doesn't it ever occur in your head? I mean, it would occur
Yeah.
to me.
Like I can kind of get that, there's a that when people sort of take shopping carts home, they're rationalizing, no, I'm going to return it, even though like there's a clear halacha that is a shoel shelo rishus. I
Mhm.
feel almanas lachzer. Even if you're planning to return it, it's called gezel. That's
Right. That's
right.
right.
But how else am I supposed to get my shopping home? Well, hire a taxi. But I can't afford it. Then make a plan.
I used to when I lived in Far Rockaway, I didn't have a low chair for Tisha B'Av. I used to use sort of the crates they used to use, to carry vegetables and stuff. I
Yeah.
always go inside and ask the manager of the vegetable, "Can I borrow this for Tisha B'Av? I will bring it back. If not that afternoon, I'll bring it back the next day." And he always
Yeah.
said, "No problem," But I had to ask. I couldn't just take it
Yeah.
because.
Of course. Of course.
And do you know Rabbi Blumenkrantz? Have you heard the name Rabbi Blumenkrantz? He publishes a big,
Yes.
right. So what a wonderful man. He was so great. Anyway, one time we were davening, and when we finished, it was pouring. It was like crazy outside, and there was an umbrella there, and he wanted to use the umbrella, and he said, "But first, I know whose umbrella it is. I have to call him and ask if I could borrow it." And he did right there. There was
Yeah.
you see the halakha right there. He just called the
Of
mitzvah.
course.
Bring it back.
Of course. Yeah. Anyway,
All
so
right.
the Mishnah tells us that that a stolen lulav is pasul. Yavesh also, if it has dried out. What's the shear of having dried out? Because it's no longer it's no longer a hadar. It's no longer called a pre-had. Okay, and it's a hekesh from the esrog, because the esrog, all of the arba minim need a hidur, and once it's dried out, it's no longer mehudar. Okay, Michelle Ashera, Michelle Irhanidachas Pasul. Now, what's in Ashera? Obviously, the idolatrous tree. If somebody turned the date palm into an Ashera, or if it was inside an Irhanidachas that had to be destroyed. Okay, Pasul, because the whole thing has got a din of being destroyed.
Right.
So therefore, actually, technically, it's lacking in size. So even before, because it has a din of being destroyed, it's missing the shear of how big it needs to be. Okay, niktam rosha, if the top has been truncated, or nifritzu alav, or the leaves have been plucked. I think is the way to explain it. Hati says yes. Mefashim should need l'shuha alim min hashidra legamre.
The top is broken off, or its leaves were severed.
Leaves were severed. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Okay, thank you. So then, in those cases, again, it's pasul. Nifridu alav. If, however, the leaves got separated, in other words, they're starting to open.
Right.
That's kasher. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yogedenu milamala. He should nonetheless tie them together from the top if the leaves have started to separate. But the halacha does not follow Rabbi Yehuda. Tzine Har Barzel. Now there were some species of date palm that grew on a place called Har Barzel, the mountain of iron, which is a place near the Arnon brook. Okay, and basically the situation is that the dekalim, the dates over there were hard, and they were more hardy that grew in the mountains, and their leaves were much shorter, so they didn't grow along the whole length of the leaf.
Uh-huh.
So it's a different kind of species, but nonetheless they are kasher. Lulav sheyesh bo shlosha tfachim kedei lenanea bo kasher. So the minimum shear of the lulav is 3 tfachim that you can shake with. Okay, which means that you've got to have hold on, kloma sheyesh lulav shlosha tfachim. It's got to have 3 tfachim in a way that the hadas and the arava will cover it. Od tefach nosaf kedei lenanea bo. So then it's got to have another tefach there. So it actually turns out that it has to be four tefachim. Shekei mitzvah lenanea lulav kasher. Okay, so it's got to stick up one tefach further than the hadassim. Okay, now onto the hadas. Hadas hagazul v'hayavesh pasul. Same as with the lulav. If it's stolen or dried, it's pasul. Shel asher shel ir nidachas pasul. Same din with the asher and the destroyed city. Niktam rosho nifretzu alav or shehayu anavav merubos me alav pasul. Okay, again, if its top was truncated, or if the leaves were stripped, or the anavim, you get these little berries on the hadas, and if there are more berries on there than leaves, that's also pasul. The im miatan kasher. However, it's legitimate to just pluck the berries off in order to make it kasher. V'ein mema'atin b'yom tov. However, you can't do that on Yom Tov. Make sure it's done before Yom Tov. Okay. Mishna Gimel, Arava Gazula V'Yavesha Psula. Same thing again. The Arava, if it's stolen or if it's dried, it's no good. Called Shel Ashera, Shel Ir Nidachas Psula. Same as before. Niktam Rosha, if the top is cut off. Nifritzu Aleha, or the leaves are stripped. V'Hatzafzafa Psula. Now, what's the tzafzafa is a species of willow. Where the leaves are rounded and Mishunanim is that I think that might be serrated. The kaneh shela lavan, and it's got a white stem. So that one is pasul because and the Gemara explains that there's also another species of willow that is which has long leaves. And its stem is reddish, but the katzotza alim einam chalakim, but the edges of the leaf are not smooth.
Are you saying this doesn't? I don't see. You said there's another plant, but this is saying over here, south it says. It's a mountain plant that resembles the arava, but its stem is white rather than reddish.
Yes.
And its leaves are rounded and serrated edges, unlike the elongated smooth leaves. Okay. But you said before that there's another one. Oh
yeah, I'm looking here in the commentary in Kahati, which also brings another species, which seems to have more kasha simanim on it, but it's okay, I'm not going to dwell on it too much. It's not worth getting into that one too much. Okay. Kamusha v'shinashu miktas aleha v'shel bal kashera. So kamusha is if it's starting to shed its leaves. Okay. V'shinashu that's shinashu miktas aleha. Kol shelo nashu rubam. As long as it hasn't lost the majority of its leaves. So if it's starting to wilt, I think kamusha is where it's starting to wilt. And or if its leaves are starting to fall off, it's still kasher as long as it's got the majority of its leaves. Michel Bal, now that's a something that grows in an irrigated field as opposed as beg your pardon. It grows from a tree that's in a field that's watered by rainwater rather than by a river. I mean, the ideal thing is it should be arvei nachal. Right, it should be growing by a stream, but nonetheless, that's kosher. So the fact that it says arvei nachal is not saying that you dafka have to have a willow tree that grows by a stream. Just that that's the typical place that willows tend to grow. So the pasuk says arvei nachal. It's the species of tree that tends to grow by the river. But if it grows somewhere not by a river, that's also okay, and there's nothing wrong with it.
He also says here. It says here, Shear says that the Testify is invalid because it's a species other than the willow required by the Torah.
Okay, that's interesting because Kahati calls it a species of willow.
And this says that the Arava is the variety that generally grows by the water, while the Testify is found only in mountains and cannot be considered willows of the stream. So
okay,
all right,
cool. Right, let's go back to Yoma.
Okay. All right. Okay, we have Chet Hey. If a pregnant woman smelled food, right? If a pregnant woman smelled food or drink and requested it, they feed her until she recovers. A sick person, they feed him according to the advice of experts. But if no experts are present, they feed him. No, we did this one. I'm sorry, or I did this yesterday, right? We did this yesterday. Hey.
Sorry, we did hay. We were on Vav.
If one was seized with bulmos, they feed him even forbidden foods until his vision is restored. If one was bitten by a mad dog, they may not feed him its liver lobe, but Reb Masya ben Karash permits it. If Masya ben Karash also said, if one has an ailment in his throat, they may drop medicine into his mouth on Shabbos because they may be a danger to life, and every possible danger to life supersedes the Sabbath. If a building collapsed on someone on the Sabbath, and it is uncertain whether he is there or not, or it is uncertain whether he is alive or dead, or uncertain whether he is a heathen or a Jew, they must clear the heap of debris for him. If they found him alive, they must clear the rest of the debris for him. But if he is dead, they leave him. A sin offering and a guilt offering for a definite sin provide atonement. Death on Yom Kippur provide atonement together with repentance. However, repentance alone atones for lesser transgressions, for positive commandments, and for negative commandments. But for the graver sins, it suspends punishment until Yom Kippur comes and provides atonement.
Okay. Shkalim Dalet Dalet.
If in that last one, if they found him alive, they must clear.
Yes.
The rest of the debris is for him. But if he's dead, they leave him. If he's Jewish,
this is because it's Yom Tov. It's because it's if it's Yom Tov, Yom Kippur, whatever it is. I mean, once you found that the person that you're worried about is there and dead, everyone's muktzah. You can't bury him. You can't do anything with him. So they just have to leave him there.
Right. Even if he's Jewish, the whole thing.
Jewish, non-Jewish doesn't matter. If somebody's dead, you can't. The mace is muktzah.
Right. Okay. What do they do with the remainder of the truma? They make gold sheets to plate the Holy of Holies. The Mishna says the profit of the fruits is used to purchase animals which are offered upon the altar when it is idle, and the remainder of the truma is used for the utensils needed for the temple service. Rabbi Akiva says the remainder of the truma is used to purchase animals which are offered upon the altar when it is idle, and the remainder of the nesachim is used for the utensils needed for the temple service. Rabbi Kananya, the God of the Kohanim, says the remainder of the nesachim is used to purchase animals which are offered upon the altar when it is idle, and the remainder of the truma is used for the utensils needed for the temple service. Neither one nor the other admitted concerning the permissibility of profiting from the fruits. What did they do with the remainder of the incense? They would set aside from the truma an amount equal to the artisan's wages, and would redeem the incense with the artisan's wages. Then they would give the incense to the artisans as their wages and repurchase it from them with funds from the new truma. If the new shkalim came in time, they purchased the incense with funds from the new truma, if not from the old. And if one consecrated his possessions, and among them were things suitable for communal offerings, these things should be given to the artisans for their wages. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Said Reb Azai to him, this is not the same method described above. Rather, they set aside from these things an amount equal to the artisan's wages, and redeem them with funds set aside for the artisan's wages. Then they give them to the artisans as their wages, and repurchase them with funds from the new truma.
Okay. Yep. Shabbos. Yud Beis Daled.
One who writes two letters in one period of forgetfulness is liable. Whether he wrote with ink, with orpiment, with vermilion, with gum, with ferrous sulfate, or with anything that marks on two walls forming a corner, or on two pages of a ledger that can be read together, he is liable. One who writes on his skin is liable. One who scratches on his skin, Reb Eliah holds him liable for a sin offering, but Reb El Yeshua exempts him. If one wrote with liquids, with fruit juices, in road dust, in scribe's dust, or with anything that does not endure, he's exempt. If one wrote with the back of his hand, with his foot, with his mouth, or with his elbow, if one wrote one letter alongside a written letter, if one wrote over another writing, If one intended to write a chet but wrote two zions, if he wrote one letter on the ground and one letter on the beam, or one wrote on two walls of the house, or on two pages of a ledger, they cannot be read together, he's exempt. If one wrote one letter as an abbreviation, Rabbi Yeshua ben Betzera holds him liable, but the Chachamim exempt him. One who writes two letters in two periods of forgetfulness, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, Rabbi Gamaliel holds him liable, but the Chachamim exempt him.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Brachas.
Hey. Remember the other direction.
I did it right this day. Someone was standing, engaged in tefillah, and remembered that he was about Kari. He does not, on that account, stop altogether. Instead, he shortens. If he descended to immerse himself and is able to come up and cover himself and to read before the sun rises, he shall come up, dress, and read, and if not, he shall cover himself with the water and read. But he may not cover himself in evil-smelling water or in water of soaking until he pours in water. How far away should one remove himself from it, from an excrement? 4 amo. A Lulav who became a Bakari, and a menstruant who discharged semen, and a woman who engaged in relations and noticed herself menstruating requires emerging. Rabbi Yehuda exempts. The tefillah of the morning until noon. Rabbi Yehuda says till 4 hours of the day. The mincha tefillah until the evening. Rabbi Yehuda says until midway through the mincha. The evening tefillah is not fixed, and the musaf all day. And Rabbi Yehuda says until the 7th hour. Okay. We have Talmud.
Base hay.
They selected from the fine wood for Katoris of a fig tree to arrange the second pyre. For the incense opposite the southwest corner, drawn 4 amos northward from the corner, and estimated 5 sars of coal. And on the Sabbath, an estimated 8 sars of coal. For they would place the 2 spoonfuls of frankincense on the showbread. The limbs and the fats that were not consumed during the night, the Kohanim returned them to the pyre. They kindled the 2 pyres with fire, and the Kohanim descended and came to the chamber of the youth stone. Though the appointed one said to him, "Come and cast lots." This is the second lottery, right? Come and cast lots. Who slaughters the Talmud offering? Who throws the blood? Who clears the ash from the inner altar? Who clears the ash from the menorah? Who brings the limbs of the Talmud up onto the ramp of the altar? The head and the right hind leg, the 2 forelegs, the fat of the tail and the left hind leg, the fat of the chest and the neck, the 2 flanks, the intestines and the fine flour, the chavitim and the wine. They cast lots, and one who won. The appointed one said to them, "Go out and see if the time for slaughtering has arrived." If the time had arrived, the observer says dawn. Master Ben Shmuel says the entire eastern sky has lit up as far as Hebron, and the observer says yes.
Right. So this, remember, we just did this in Yoma, this whole procedure, and in Yoma it asks the question, why did we go to this extent? Because one time there was a moonrise, and it looked like the whole horizon was lighting up, and they had to burn the Talmud outside because it became possible. Okay. Bava Matzia Gimel Ches.
He may deduct a 1/6 for wine. Rabbi Yehuda says a 1/5. He may deduct 3 lugim of oil per 100, a log and a half for sediment, and a log and a half for absorption. If it was refined oil, he may not deduct for sediment. If the vessels were old, he may not deduct for absorption. And Rabbi Yehuda says also, if one sells refined oil to another for all the days of the year, the latter must accept upon himself a log and a half sediment per 100. If one deposits a cask with another and its owner had not designated a place for it, and he moved it and it broke, if it broke from his hand, then if he had moved it for his benefit, then he is liable. For its benefit, he is exempt. If he broke after he put it down, whether he had moved it or for a benefit, is exempt. If the owner had designated a place for it and he moved it and it broke, whether from his hand or whether after he put it down, if he had moved it for his benefit, he is liable for its benefit. he's exempt. If one deposits money with another and he tied up and slung it behind him or gave it over to his minor son or daughter and locked the door before them inadequately, he is liable since he did not watch as shomrim do, but if he watched as shomrim do, he's exempt.
Okay. All right.
Found out, by the way, that my Apple needs a new drive.